Hey guys, so I'm doing my first kind of book haul of 2020. I actually filmed half of this at the end of last year, but when I looked back all of the footage was completely blurry and out of focus, so I've kind of merged two quite big book hauls into one. I've got like this stack and, God, I'm not even sure if I can lift this one. This stack of books, so there's loads to get through. I'm really excited. I've bought loads of good new books recently. A few I've been sent, so I've kind of included those as well, or I've been given for Christmas. As I said, I'm going to try and make this really speedy to get through them all without being here for like 40 minutes. So I've just been went and found the book that was missing, that was just sat on its own in my spare room. Anyway, let's get going. So most of these I've gotten from charity shops for like £2 or £3, sometimes like £1.50 or something. So it's just so great when you find like something really good that you've wanted to read for ages in a charity shop for a few pounds instead of having to buy it for full price or just not buying it at all. And then you kind of feel a bit good as well for giving money to the charity for your books. So first is The Prison Doctor by Amanda Brown. I read This Is Going to Hurt at the start of 2019, really loved it. I'm interested in like delving into that side of non-fiction again. My friend works in a prison and has read this and said it's really good, so I'm hoping that I like it as well. This is The Winter Crown by Elizabeth Chadwick. It's something that my nan gave to me last time let's make that quiet. It's something that my nan gave to me last time I went down to visit her. When I was younger, we used to read lots of Philippa Gregory books together. We both really like historical fiction, so usually when I see her, she passes on something that she's enjoyed. This is The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty, which looks like it's been weirdly cut off too short at the edge. But I've heard a lot about her books on Instagram. Everybody really raves about how like tense they are as thrillers, and I'm hoping that this is one of the good ones. I wasn't really sure which was like her best one or which to go for first, but when I came across this I just thought I'd pick it up. China Rich Girlfriend by Kevin Kwan is something that I'm really excited to read. I read Crazy Rich Asians last year, really loved it, and this is the second in the series. It picks up where the last book left off, and it left on a bit of a kind of slight cliffhanger, so I'm not usually, I don't usually go out and buy the next book in a series straight away, but I felt like I really wanted to with this, and obviously there's a third as well, which at some point I assume I'll try and get my hands on. There's a few Steve Kavanagh books in this pile. I read 13 last year and it was one of my absolute favourite books of the year, probably my favourite thriller. It was really tense. I didn't see the twist coming, so now I've basically bought everything he's ever written. This is The Defence. It's got, I think it's got the same character, yeah, Eddie Flynn, who's the lawyer in 13, is the main character in this as well, and I think probably in the other books that I picked up. Lots of thrillers. So this is An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapina. She's probably my favourite thriller writer. Anything that I've read by her, I always think I'm really clever and I've got the gist of what's going on, and then I never do. She wrote The Couple Next Door. Her most recent book, I think, is Someone We Know, that came out in July, and then this is from somewhere in between. It's like whizzing through. Homegoing by Yagyasi, which I assume I've butchered, has such a pretty cover. I love it. It says on the back, Effia and Essie are two sisters with very different destinies. One's sold into slavery and one is a slave trader's wife. So I think this is going to be probably quite upsetting, but very good. I've heard good things. Things in Jars by Jess Kidd is one of the books that I said that I got sent to talk about on Instagram. I've already read it. It's basically it's very heavy on the fantasy about a female detective living in Victorian times looking for a stolen child who turns out to be some kind of mythical creature. It wasn't for me, but I think some people would really love it. Oh, it's been a while since I've read a Game of Thrones book. I read 3 of them last year and I'm pretty sure that's why I didn't hit my like Goodreads target, because they took so long. And this one is massive. It's A Feast for Crows. It's the 4th kind of book in the series, but book 3 is split into 2 volumes, so it's the 5th volume, if that makes sense. It picks up where we left off in the series. I think this is where A Feast for Crows and Dancing with Dragons, I don't know if this is where all the stories split into 2, or if the 2 Dancing with Dragons books are split into, like, the characters are split into 2 groups and only half of their stories are told in each. I think if I read this year, it's going to be a big challenge. I think it's 800 pages, so... Then we have The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, which I read as a teen. I read the whole trilogy, and it was one of my favourite things that I read at school. And I've seen so many people talk about it, like on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and saying they really loved it, and it's made me really want to read it again. I love the cover. I don't know how well you can see it if I like move it around in the light. There's lots of like little words on the back. Patrick Ness is a really, really good writer in my opinion, and I love his books, and this trilogy is just so, so good. Okay. Then we have Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. I read The 13th Tale by her, again, when I was a teenager, and it was like the first book that I can remember. The ending shocked me so much that if I went and reread the book, which I kind of want to do, it would be from a completely different perspective. Like, since then other books have done that for me, but that was the really first one that completely shocked me. I'm really hoping this is as good. I love the cover. It's... it kind of reminds me of the Essex Serpent or something like that. Or The Familiars, which I've got in this pile. So this is another one that I've already read. It's Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered by Karen Kilgareth and Georgia Hardstark, who they run a podcast together called My Favourite Murder. It's a true crime / comedy podcast. I listen to it all the time when I'm doing my chores and things, and this is their memoir where they talk about therapy and grief and addiction and their childhoods, and it was really, really good. If you're a fan of the podcast, I would really recommend it. It doesn't like ruin it in any way. Their voices come across really well. It was my favourite book that I've read in 2020 so far. And then we have another Steve Kavanagh book, and this one has got sprayed edges. It's Twisted. So the back says, before you read this book, I want you to know 3 things. The police are looking to charge me with murder. No one knows who I am or how I did it. If you think you found me, I'm coming for you next. After you read this book, you'll know the truth is far more twisted. So it's going to obviously be another crime thriller again. As I said, I really, really liked his writing before. I'm really hoping it's just as good in his other books, because otherwise I've bought a whole ton of things that are rubbish. This is Before the Fall by Noah Hawley. He created the Fargo TV series according to the cover, but I read a book by him last month called The Good Father, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was very well written. I'm hoping this is as well. It's about a little boy involved in a plane crash. Yes, and he's one of 2 survivors of it. It'll probably be quite sad, but that's what I'm here for. So the cover of this is like the prettiest thing I've ever owned. It's The Familiars by Stacey Hall. I've heard it talked about on Instagram over and over again. It's all about... I've read the blurb like 7 times. Right, so it's all about a young pregnant woman and a midwife who basically become friends, and I assume there's lots and lots of drama in it. As I said, I've heard only good things about it, and it's pretty, so even if it's rubbish, at least it looked nice. And this is the final Steve Kavanagh book. It's The Liar. I was really pleased actually. All of the books of his that I picked up are brand new, and they were like £2 each. It's just another crime thriller with the same main character, Eddie Flynn, the lawyer. There's only so much you can say about a thriller. It's thrilling. I'm probably gonna like it. I'm trying to do this quickly. Right, and this is another book that I read as a teen that I really loved, that I wanted to pick up again. It's Uglies by Scott Westerfield, or Westerfeld. It's part of originally it was a trilogy turned into a series of 4 books that I don't know what the name of that is. They were Uglies, Pretties, Specials, and then he made extras. So when you were a kid, basically in this fantasy world that the book is set in, you just look like your normal self, and when you turn 16, I think it is, you're turned into a pretty. You go under loads of plastic surgery to make you look like what society wants you to look like, whatever that is. And you have a chip put under your skin so they can track you, etc, etc. And it's all about a girl that doesn't want to become a pretty. She wants to stay as she is because she doesn't want to be tracked. She doesn't want to have all this plastic surgery done, and it's really, really good. I feel like it was really ahead of its time. It was written in, or published in 2005, but obviously there's just so much kind of like pressure now at the moment to look like the girls on Instagram that have had loads of plastic surgery, and to have plastic surgery yourself to look like them, and people are doing it younger and younger. So I think it's, yeah, it'll be a really good book to revisit. Oh. And then we've just got 2 left, these big hardbacks. I really don't like reading hardbacks very much. I think I've just got weak wrists that don't want to hold them. I find it really like uncomfortable, but maybe that's just me. This is The Binding by Bridget Collins, which I read towards the end of last year. Again, this is a really pretty cover, and actually inside, look at that, it's so shiny. I love this. It was one of my favourite books of the year. It's set in kind of another fantasy world where basically books only exist as memories that people have tried to get rid of. So when something traumatic happens to you, or something you just don't want to remember, you go and see a binder and they kind of like draw the memory out of you and put it in a book. The book's stored safely and then you can't remember it. And it's all about a man that becomes a binder, but as he's learning his trade, he realises that at some point he has been bound himself and there's something that he's forgetting that's important. And it's all about how he, like, what he finds out. And it was just really, really good. It's very slow at the start, but if you read it, like, stick with it. It is really, really good in the end. And there's a really kind of, like, good element to it that I can't say what it is without ruining the story, but it was a really, really beautiful story, I think. And finally, something that really was not a beautiful story. This is The Memory Wood by Sam Lloyd, and it's one of the scariest, again, thrillers that I've read in so long. It's all about a 12-year-old girl that gets kidnapped and she gets taken to the Memory Wood. She's locked up in a basement underground in the middle of the wood by a boy named Kyle, and his brother Elijah comes and sees her all the time and sneaks her little snacks, but she's effectively being tortured, and while she's been kidnapped she's been taken away from her mum, and it's all, the story kind of alternates between her perspective and how she's trying to survive and Elijah's perspective on the world. He's clearly struggling with things a bit and he's very confused. And there's quite a few twists. There's a few that I guessed, but a few that I really didn't. I realise now that I'm talking about this for so long. Yeah, that's the end of my massive kind of end of 2019, start of 2020 book haul. I feel like I probably won't need to buy books for months and months, but I still will. So I really hope you enjoyed this and it didn't go on for too long. And thank you very much for watching. Bye.